The estate bows. The carriage rattled over the worn path leading to the Uggle tenant farms, its wooden wheels crunching through patches of frost and mud. Michelle sat upright despite the cold, her small hands resting in her lap, her chin held high in a way that mirrored her father at his most commanding. She wore no silks, only a plain wool cloak and gloves too large for her fingers, but her posture alone made the two guards riding beside the carriage glance at her with something close to awe. This was not a social visit. The Duke's seal rested in her pocket, and the ledgers she had spent the last 3 nights purrung over sat beside her in a leather satchel. She knew every name, every debt, every overdue tax her father had been too lenient to collect or too distracted to notice. She knew which families teetered on the edge of ruin, which fields had gone untended, which mills had gone silent for lack of coin. When the carriage stopped, a small gathering of tenants stood waiting, their faces cautious, some openly scornful. To them she was not yet a Savaruk, only a child, soft-handed and coddled, come to meddle in matters she could not possibly understand. Michelle stepped down onto the frozen ground, her boots sinking slightly into the thawing earth. The wind caught her dark hair and tugged at the edge of her cloak as she walked forward, unflinching toward the gathered crowd. "Which of you is Fuggers Mackay?" she asked, her voice clear and even. A barrel-chested man with soot-streaked hands and a deep scowl stepped forward. "I, and who asks? I thought the Duke would send his steward, not his bairn." Whispers rippled through the onlookers, a few snickers. Michelle did not so much as blink. "I am not here as his bairn," she replied. "I am here as his heir and as the steward of Castle Uggle in his stead. You have not paid rent for 6 months, Master Mackay. Not because you cannot, but because Hugrove overcharged your lease by 50% and left your mill without repairs." The murmurs turned into sharp glances between the tenants. Fuggers's scowl faltered. "And how would you know that, little miss?" Michelle opened her satchel, retrieving a folded parchment. "Because I reviewed every ledger myself, and because I had your millwright inspect the gears last night. You'll have the repairs by week's end. Your rent will return to its rightful amount, and your overdue payments will be cleared if you swear loyalty to this house." Gasps, heads turned. Fuggers looked stunned, his soot-marked hand rubbing the back of his neck as if to ground himself. "Cleared, you'd forgive the arrears." Michelle met his gaze without flinching. "In exchange for your loyalty and your service to this estate, we rise together or we fall apart. There is no middle ground." The murmur of voices shifted, skepticism giving way to curiosity, even hope. One by one, other tenants began stepping forward, wives, sons, men who had once cursed the Uggle crest for the crushing weight of its debts. Each found themselves studded by a girl with marble-dark eyes and the bearing of a queen, despite her youth. By the time the winter sun dappled low on the horizon, every tenant had bent a knee, not out of fear, but out of respect. Michelle, the 10-year-old Duchess, stood atop the hill as the last agreement was signed, the Duke's seal pressed firmly into the wax by her own steady hand. When she returned to the castle that evening, the fires were already lit in every hearth, the halls scrubbed clean, the Granger family overseeing the kitchens and storerooms as if they had been there for years. The old servants' whispers had faded into silence. Those who had not yet left knew better than to cross her now. In her father's chamber, the Duke watched her approach, his leg bound and elevated, his face pale with pain but bright with something rare, pride. "Well, my jewel," he murmured as she handed him the signed agreements, "you've done what men twice your age failed to do. They're calling you something out there, you know." Michelle tilted her head, curious. "The little Duchess," he said, smiling faintly. "They mean it as a jest, perhaps, but I suspect soon enough it will not be." Michelle allowed herself the smallest of smiles, her fingers brushing against the locket at her throat. "Let them call me what they wish. One day, father, they will call me something else entirely." "The little Duchess is..." The Duke's seal felt heavy in Michelle's hand, its cold metal pressing into her palm as though testing her resolve. She stood in her father's study, her study now, while the staff assembled before her, their faces a mixture of confusion, fear, and thinly veiled disdain. The scent of ink, parchment, and wood smoke filled the air, mingling with the tension. She was only 10 years old, small for her age, with dark hair cascading over her shoulders and a simple wool dress hanging loosely on her frame. Yet there was no tremor in her voice as she addressed them, her words sharp and deliberate. "From this day forward," she began, her marble-dark eyes sweeping the room, "Castle Uggle will no longer be governed by leeches who drain its coffers and sneer at its bloodline. If you cannot serve with loyalty and skill, you may leave at once. The steward, a gaunt man with a nose like a hawk's beak, scoffed. "And who, pray, is to see to the estate? You, my lady, you are but a child." Michelle tilted her chin ever so slightly, the same tilt her father used when he silenced opponents without raising his voice. "Yes, I will see to the estate. And as for you, Master Hugrove, you will not see to anything. You are dismissed." Gasps rippled through the hall. Hugrove's face flushed crimson. "You cannot." She extended the Duke's seal, the Granger family crest glinting in the firelight. "I can, and I have." Two footmen, already whispering about where their loyalties might lie, stepped forward to escort Hugrove from the hall. Michelle did not watch him go. She turned instead to the remaining servants, their postures stiff, their eyes darting nervously between one another. "Those who remain," she said, "will do so not as servants but as stewards. You will keep this house as if it were your own. In exchange, all debts owed to my father will be forgiven. Your children will be sent to proper schools, paid for by this estate, and each of you will receive wages worthy of honest lapka, not scraps." A murmur spread through the room. Shock, uncertainty, hope, cautious and fragile, flickered in a few pairs of eyes. "Should you fail me," Michelle added, her young voice softening into something more dangerous, "you will find no second chance." Silence followed, broken only by the low crackle of the fireplace. Slowly, one by one, heads began to bow, not with mockery, but with a growing, reluctant respect. Among them stood the Granger family, who had tilled the Duke's lands for generations yet struggled beneath crushing debts. The matriarch, a stout woman named Elspeth Granger, met Michelle's gaze with something rare: approval. "My lady," Elspeth said, her voice firm but not unkind, "you have our loyalty. We will see to it this house prospers under your watch." Michelle inclined her head, a gesture of acknowledgement far older than her years. "Then let us begin. There is work to do and no time to waste." Within days, the castle shifted. The idle chatter of bitter servants faded, replaced by the steady rhythm of purposeful hands and voices. Ledgers were balanced, supplies accounted for, and the lands once neglected began to flourish again. The tenants, long wary of the Uggle name, began to whisper a new one: the little Duchess. And though Michelle was still just a girl, barely tall enough to reach the high shelves of her father's study, her word carried the weight of a sovereign. She no longer slept in the attic. She slept in her mother's chamber now, beneath velvet drapes, the portrait of Princess Zaria watching over her from above the mantel. Every night before the candles were snuffed, Michelle would glance at her mother's painted face and whisper, "I will not be broken, Mama. I will not be forgotten. And when the day comes, they will see what your daughter was born to be."